But yeah, I kind of love that example also because that's an example of sort of like reimagining healthcare with women in mind, right? I think we've talked a lot about, or I think everyone here knows there's tremendous gender data health gaps, right? So we're lacking information about women on a research level. But healthcare also hasn't been designed from a care perspective, from a patient experience perspective with women in mind, right? Women are more likely to be caregivers, to have other responsibilities that they have to juggle. We also see that that's why it's harder to retain them in clinical trials. We saw that they're more likely to use telehealth adoption during the pandemic because it was easier for them to access care. We know that women are more likely to suffer from chronic diseases as opposed to acute diseases, and like the healthcare system that we have right now is structured very much around acute diseases. Men get into more accidents, right? And so that's what's more likely to be reimbursed, whereas chronic, it's like, it won't kill you. So you can just sort of struggle with the information, it's sort of diffuse and opaque. So we actually have a workshop today on redesigning healthcare with women in mind, and that's going to be sort of looking at the patient experience, looking at what's working, what's not working. But that's sort of the thesis of the whole summit, really. How can we sort of redesign these different structural systems, whether it's the role of the clinician and media in women's health? So we've touched upon a lot about how no change can happen without awareness. I think finally, when you look at the reports around women's health, we're starting to reach a critical threshold of conversation and motivated stakeholders. I think 2 years ago, I had to explain to everybody what FemTech was when I was organizing a conference. Literally nobody knew. Now it's like 50-50. I still have to ask, and sometimes people will be like, yeah, I know what, and then after they're like, oh wait, so this is not FinTech? And then I'm like, no. But so we're starting to reach a critical threshold of conversation. I think media, I think social media has a tremendous role to play in that because we've finally kind of eliminated the gatekeeper, given women direct access to sort of speak, but that's also dangerous, right? So there's a stat that shows that 72% of women never double check healthcare information that they receive online. And we know that doctors typically, depending on what role they play, have about 15 minutes with a patient. They don't have the time to educate, right? So it's sort of, how can we reimagine that system so women are getting the information? Shouldn't be normal that someone like me, I was first introduced to endometriosis and PCOS in medical school in gynecology class, right? Most people don't have that luxury to discover it. And that's why part of the reason it can take 7.5 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. So that's a tremendously interesting problem to tackle. We have a workshop on financing innovation in women's health. I think often part of the problem why we don't have that innovation is there's a lack of funds specifically dedicated to women's health. So for example, menopause, for the NIH, there's no specific category to get funding for research into that. So yeah, I wasn't not trying to shout out all the other workshops, really interested in sort of the business case for women's health.
The ESG one, right?
ESG alignment on women's health, yeah. Yeah, they're all fascinating.
Women-centric cancer care.
Women-centric cancer care. Yeah.